He's the head of the Unity Training Science, and his team, they are working in talent identification, talent development. One specific field of Michael is relative age and the biological age. Maybe, Michael, we can just start with you as you just joined us. Could you just explain in just a few words the Swiss way of talent identification?
Yeah, and in Switzerland we have the PISTE program. So PISTE is an abbreviation. It means it should be prognostic. So we look for future potential of the athletes. The I stands for it's integrative. So it's a multidisciplinary approach. S is, as Antje said, we try to be systematic, transparent and objective, which is very hard. And TE is from German, it stands for evaluations by coaches. So the coaches have the most important part in our talent identification, not the scientists. So yeah, this is PISTE, and the main goal of PISTE is to improve the probability to predict future potential. So in former times we had a lot of performance results. It was based on performance results, and now we try to be much more multidisciplinary. Yeah, the criteria is still performance results, development of performance, performance tests, psychological factors, athletes' biography, and we try to correct all the performance results by biological maturation. So that's where we do some science as well.
Okay, I'm sure there are questions about talent development, talent identification from your side, so the microphone is open. Maybe. Yeah.
Just to add something from my side in between. In our counseling of the federations, we try to convince them that if they have the resources, they should deselect as late as possible. So this is one of our main problems too. If you select too early, the chances of having selected the wrong guys is quite big. So we are working on that, and that's quite a complicated task, as you can imagine.
Okay, thank you very much. And I've probably got a question, especially concerning Switzerland, and especially concerning what David described, what you just did in the last couple of years with this new framework. Looking back 2 presentations earlier, the SPLIS study revealed actually that talent and talent identification and development was relatively highly ranked in the SPLIS model. Was your activity you've initiated now despite this finding or because of this finding, or was this finding reflecting that you were doing something regarding talent identification?
It was the last. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it seems to be quite a sophisticated system that we have in Switzerland, but still our talent pool is not as big as from our neighbor north. So we really have to be very good in this part of all the themes that are important for us.
How you handle those individual data and all those numbers and knowledge which you have in the system? I mean that this European Union, this data security regulations which are coming tighter and tighter now this year, because we are thinking this much in Finland when we test about the athletes and young athletes and so on. How you can handle this question? Who can use those knowledge data?
So we have the same problem. So my vision is to have a Swiss-wide database with all the data from a scientific point of view, but it's not possible. And all the data is normally in the federation, and I try to get it. But we have some ideas, and maybe one time we can have a database which is hosted by Swiss Olympic, but we cannot have it here in the Swiss Federal Institute for Sport. That's too hard way, too long.
In Germany, it's no, we do have the same problems and the same discussions, but there are different solutions. In some federations, the athletes have to agree that for scientific use and for the use of federation, their data are collected. And for scientific use, it has to be anonymous. We almost use databases or try to use databases as well. And for example, for the Handball Federation, it's a solution that each athlete can define who can access or who can see or read the data. So they define my national coach can see my performance data or of my medical diagnostics, and my club coach can see it as well. So the athlete defines and can, made by a click, the free access for the coaches or for the persons he defines. But it's different from federation to federation. In the most federations, the athletes have to sign when they become a club, or not a club, a squad member, that they allow the federation to use the data and to collect the data. But it's a huge discussion. For example, in speed skating, we were not allowed in the beginning to collect the size or the weight of the athletes. But now it changes.
It would be really important to have these dates because in the long-term development, it would be very interesting to see how the athletes that get to the top develop during their whole career, 10, 15 years, whatever. That would be really interesting. But as Michi told, it's quite difficult. What we get is the results from the federations out of these piste tests, because it's not the same with FTM. FTM, you can choose as federation to go on the FTM framework. With piste, you have to, because piste is the entry ticket to our card system with the talent cards, and you have to do these tests from a young age, from the moment you need, for example, a school solution for an athlete, you need these cards. That means you have to do piste, and you have to show the results at Swiss Olympic.
Yes, one point that just discussing with Dale now, it's something appeared in our last meeting in Durban in summer. Last year we have they call about the ghost. Something appears suddenly and you don't know where they're coming from. So I just to mix this concept that appears then with other concept. I remember a study for a couple of years ago in Germany that talking about the gold medalists are the guys who select their sport at 14. And some sports that happen. So these kind of points, how you deal with this uncertainty that you cannot predict that those guys could appear suddenly in your environment and it's a successful athlete and it wins medals. So how you can deal with these concepts in your platforms? I know you have Pista, you have other approaches could help with that.
So
that happens to you sometime?
So the most important is the talent development, I think, the FTM pathway, and the talent selection has to be done on some points in the pathway, but you always have to be open. So you always have to have a chance to come back. So that's the idea, that you are never completely deselected by the system. You just can deselect yourself. You always have a chance to come back, or you should have. That's the idea. So, from the piste philosophy,
it's a theory, and it works in different disciplines. In some, it doesn't. In some, if you're not on the pathway, you don't have a chance to get back. Especially in the technical disciplines, it's almost impossible. But on some others, we really discussed this theme with the federations, and as Michi told, we try to convince them that they have to open their windows at least every year for guys that are somewhere around this pathway.
I would like to add some ideas that I have some experiences on having little children at 4, 5, 6 performing very well. They get the skills at the early age. They forget that. They return back in the system at 14 or 16 or 15, and they boom, they explode. And it's a technical event. Sometimes it could happen. So you cannot manage this because you even don't know that at 4 he was doing that. It was a family environment that helping them to do that at very great level. He stopped it. He had no more interest. And then suddenly he came back to the system 10 years later and says, wow. And he have the skills inside him to perform. I think there are a lot of curiosities and uncertainties that we have to search in order that, because it will happen and you don't know how and when.
But I think we are all aware that we are no prophets and that we can't have a look into the future, and that all our instruments are only a support for the coach's eye, and we can't make our instrument better than the coach's eye. I think we can only help them, support them to improve their eye, and we will have those cases you explained. But it will happen.
Yeah.
I think one major impact of this whole PISTE program that is now 8 years old, 9 years old, was really that I'd say the majority of the Swiss federations went in a way of this multi-criteria access to talent ID, and before it was mainly results, really result in the youth sports, and we all know that that's not really the prognostics.
And a major scientific point is that we tell the federations, if it's possible, to select after maturation or after peak height velocity. So after 14, 15 years, you can predict very well, and before, it's not very good.
Yep. But this won't help you for gymnastics, for swimming, for figure skating, for trampoline.
So before we try to improve the probability.
Yep. Yep.
But we don't really know if we do.
Just another question for you, David. You explained that your system is quite new. Just would like to know if you take the inspiration from other countries or other systems. Maybe you did a benchmark of the other TID systems, or is it your own system with your own specificities of the Swiss sports?
No, I don't think that we have some other situation than in all the other countries that are represented here. I think it's a mixture out of our experience and what we have been watching all around us. It's a mix, which we believe the coach plays an important role.
Maybe. Yes.
Sorry, you triggered me with your last sentence, and you also said that the coach is very important. And we had the presentation about the coach education. Do you have specific education for talent coaches, or they all have the same education and one goes work with the seniors and one with the talents? And the same question for Antje, of course.
Mm-hmm. We have. Mark told you the difference between the youth and sports program and the professional coach education. And youth and sport has 4 levels. And on the 4th level, there's a differentiation between if you're staying in popular basic sport or if you're going into performance sport. If you're choosing to go into performance sport as coach, you have the theme talent ID in this education on the 4th level. Included the persons of the federations that are running these TID programs. So that's every coach that works with youth athletes should know how the TID and the PISTE testing works in their sports. That's part of their education.
And we try to build evidence-based tools to support these coaches. So how to evaluate psychology, how to implement biological age and stuff.
In Germany, all the coaching development programs are in the responsibility of the federations, And there are a few federations who have special courses for coaches in the talent ID and the talent development area, but only a few. And then on the next step or next level, we do have the Trainer Academy. They have a curriculum for a diploma trainer. I think it's similar to you. And so far, they didn't have a special course or a special curriculum for junior elite sports coaches, but last week we started one meeting with some experts from different universities, us, Trainer Academy as well. Unfortunately, no coach and no member of a federation, but hopefully we'll change this next time. And we try to construct or to develop a special course and curriculum for trainers and coaches in junior elite sports, starting, I think, in July this year. So hopefully soon, but not yet.
There's an addition, not regarding education, but we try to convince the federations that the experts that do these pista testings should be the same all over Switzerland. So tested. And another counseling is that it's not only one person that is judging an athlete, or at least two or better 4 or 5 experts that are giving their rating or for this athlete.
Okay, one question to coaches education. Do you have in your countries a special program to ex-high-level athletes? Because we have done these now three different courses in Finland. It has been a very high level success. We pick up the ex-medal level athletes and prepare some kind of group and mix them and it's 1.5 year. Have you some kind of experience?
Yeah, it exists also in youth and sports. There are shorter ways for the top athletes to do these 4 levels of youth and sports. And what we actually try to do is to convince the federations that they bring their athletes into coach education during their career, not at the end. So if they stop, they're already on a quite good level to, if they want to start coaching. And we included some coach education programs into the army programs. So if they are here for 18 weeks, they're doing some coach education in their discipline.
In Germany, most of the federations have special programs, some kind of intensive course, short-term programs and educational programs. And on the second level, the level of the Trainer Academy, usually you need the recommendation of your federation to take part there. And you need at least 2 years of high-level experience as a coach. But there are lots of former athletes or still active athletes who receive the recommendation of their federation to take part or become member of this education program with the other coaches. One actual example are 2 cross-country skiers who finished after Sochi and just started right in the next year or the next season without any coaching experience on this studies or this education program at the Trainer Academy. So there are lots of former athletes.
Just another question. Is Pista running the same protocol for individual and team sports?
No, the Pista's program has to be adapted by every federation. So it's just a recommendation by the criteria, and then the federation decides, does it fit to the sport, and which tests do I do, which psychological factors do I need, and all the Pista programs are adapted to the sport.
And they are already set up specific assessments, or they are open to create another ones because you're looking for a team sport and an individual sport are so different. How we can approach the evaluation?
That's an interesting question. And regarding talent transfer, we would be happy if there would be some cross-links. Right now, there aren't. It's really specific. They're looking, handball is looking, do they fit in the profile of handball? And soccer is looking for soccer players. But it's not like for example, if you have a test in Speed Force and you see this guy would be great for bobsleigh, they don't put him to bobsleigh.
We have some experience. We play with our water polo girls. We put them in wrestling. And the experience, it was amazing.
Yeah, and if we would have a nationwide database, we could do it in the background.
Yep.
And we could contact the athlete directly. This would be very nice.
How does it work at the moment? By chance or?
The talent transfer? Yeah, it's, if it's not organized by the federations, it's by chance or by the athlete himself or the coaches has contact. So it's not systematic.
Yeah, we have one access to the younger athletes because we're running 2 training camps for the national federations a year in Tenero, and there we have a general testing which the federation can take part, and there sometimes we see some athletes that the sport scientist says maybe they're better in another sport, but that's the only thing right now that's happening.
I think in Germany there's one kind of sport where it happens systematically in bobsleigh. The coaches of the Bob Federation are going to the athletics practice, but lots of coaches told me that they are not allowed to enter the gym anymore because they recruited the athletic throwers or 400-meter sprinters.
Yeah, as I told before, for the Youth Olympic Games in Lausanne, we have a collaboration between Swiss athletics and Swiss sliding, and they made it like this. They allowed. Swiss sliding was analyzing the results of the sprint competitions in Switzerland, the Swiss Championship, and they went to Swiss athletics and said, we like to invite these 50 guys or girls, and Swiss athletics had the opportunity to take out their high potentials, and so all the rest went because they know they're not going to do bobsleigh for these 2 years, only bobsleigh. So they're staying into athletics and are doing bobsleigh on plus, and so they're not losing any athlete. So this works quite good.
Okay, maybe one last question about what the 2 of you mentioned, Antje and Michael, about the biological development, and which is also very important for the system. So Dave is also implied, and maybe even the centers. To your experience, are there federations who are willing to adapt their system according to the problem of the biological development in the talent identification and development?
Of course, they are willing, in my opinion. They need an easy tool to assess or to rate the biological maturation. I think we do have an easy tool. We adopted it by your developments, and for us it's a freeware. We give it to the federations and we help them to interpret the data. It's a kind of an Excel sheet, like you use it too, based on the Mirwald formula, and they are willing to use it. For example, the Boxing Federation uses it, the Speed Skating Federation and the Swimming Federation as well. The Basketball Federation used it, but they told us that they have some problems because the sample is really old. And for the huge players, or for the smallest and for the hugest players, they have some problems with the accuracy of the assessment. But they are willing to and hope or want to have some more accurate estimations.
Yeah, in Switzerland, most of the federations are willing as well. And we try to give them tools like the Mirwald, which is anthropometric, and if they don't want to do this, they can do just an evaluation of from the coaches. They just say you are late, you are normal, you are early. This fits quite well, and the highest level is X-ray of the left wrist. So, for example, the Soccer Federation is doing all the 3 levels, and they are very convinced, and I think they will do it in the future as well.
I think it's a special problem in team sports, and right now, for example, Swiss Ice Hockey is doing an interesting thing with their youth categories. They're having a special agreement for late developers, so they can play longer in a lower category, for example. So they're trying to do some stuff, especially for the late developer.
I don't know, is this small or big question? Because are you using already those DNA testing with those young talent athletes?
No.
Because they are coming, you know.
They're not coming, they're here. We don't use them.
We don't use as well, and don't even think about. Because
Ethics.
of ethics. Yeah.
What is the problem? Can you
So I would love to, but it's not still not in discussion in Switzerland. So yeah, and it's relevant, and it would be good for some athletes as well. So it's on the ethical side, it's yes and no. So it's in between. So we could try, from my point of view.
My problem is that I don't want to assess or to estimate based on a DNA factor whether there's a potential or not. I think it's much too short, and I don't know very much about the DNA testing and the potentials and the accuracy as well. And in my opinion, I'm not God, and I don't want to decide whether this is a ski jumper or a soccer player or something else.
Today the tools are not good enough,
Yep.
but if they would be good, I would use it. So because you can tell the athlete, yeah, you have a chance or you have not a chance, and if somebody invests 10 years of his life and you know before he will not have a chance, that's not ethical from my point of view.
But still know if you ever can say if he has a chance or
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's the point.
And do you have any indications that there's a direct link between the DNA or one characteristic of the DNA and the potential, or?
Yeah, because there is a huge development results now in this field of sport. Some genetical relations between different kind of skills or performance part of the human being.
Yeah, and we already do with height, with predicted adult height. So that's genetic a little. Also most of the height is genetic, and we are already saying to somebody if he will be 1.70 meters, you shouldn't be a blocker in beach volleyball. So and if you look at the piste in Swiss volleyball, it's 90% predicted by height. So they already do.
Okay, if the height and the predicted height is a DNA factor or genetic factor, then I agree, but more detail.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
But there could be much more things like that.
We do.
Okay, I think, yeah, this will maybe be a topic for another session, another conference. And maybe we can start tonight to discuss that. But first of all, I would like to thank the audience. It was really very interesting to listen, to discuss, to hear the questions, the opinions, and the contributors. Thanks a lot to everybody. And I will give the micro to the boss, Manu. Thanks a lot.